Okay, so we're doing a review of Daf Yud Aleph. So Daf Yud Aleph starts off with Amru Chav Mechanina, the bottom Daf Yud Amud Beis. Yeah, so the Gemara discusses the question of why the Parashas Roitzchem, which is mentioned in Yeshua. In other words, there's a Parashas Roitzchem in Teres Moshe, where Kadosh Baruch Hu instructs Moshe Rabbeinu with regards to the mitzvah, the Klal Yisroel with regards to the mitzvah of Ari Mikla. And then in Yeshua, Hashem actually told Yeshua, now's the time to actually make the Ari Mikla, which is in Eretz Yisrael, and instructs him. So there's a Parashas Ari Mikla in Yeshua. The question is, why does it say B'lashon Azah? Meaning to say in the rest of Nach or in the rest of Sefer Yeshua, it says it always says Vayoyim Hashem, not Vayidaber Hashem, which is a stronger lashon. Why over here does it say in a strong lashon? So the Chachamim Mechanina says, the Gemara says that the reason is because Neishein Shel Torah. Since unlike the rest of Yeshua, here Yeshua was being Mekayim a mitzvah which was said in the Torah, so it says in a lashon of Dibur in a stronger lashon because the Torah, to show that it's an Indian of Torah. Gemara then asks the Kasha that the Chora, you're telling me, you're assuming that whenever it says the word, the lashon Diber, Daber, it's Azah, it's Kasha, it's harsh. We see there's other places where it says otherwise. Nidburu Amim Yadber Amim Tachteinu Nid what's the lashon? Nidburu Yadber Amim Tachteinu. So the Gemara basically says there's a difference between Daber and Yidaber. Between daber and yidaber. So when it says yidaber or nadaber, then it can be lashon rach, it can be a gentle lashon. But when it says daber, it's always lashon azah. So since we're on this topic, we say that it's taka machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, but again this discussion. Why it says lashon azah by Yeshua or Mikla? One opinion is taka like Rabbi Chanina said that it's Neishein Shel Torah, but the other one is because he delayed. In other words, Yeshua should have done it straight away. Straight after the Chaluk of Eretz Yisrael, he should have set up the Eir Miklat, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to instruct him. He didn't do it until Hashem instructed him, so that's why he was Vayidab. Hashem was, so to speak, upset that you didn't do it straight away. You waited till I instructed you. Another machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and others with regards to the Eir Miklat is that it says in the pasuk in Yeshua, Vayichtav Yeshua Sadvar Me'ela B'Sefer Torah Salakim. Yeshua wrote these words in Sefer Torah Salakim. The question is, what's going on over here? Yeshua didn't write Torah Salakim, didn't write Torah Moshe, didn't write Chamisha Chumshi Torah. So what's Pshat? So there's two Pshatim. One of the Tanoim says that it's Shmoyne Psukim. No, Yeshua did write Chamisha Chumshi Torah. The last 8 Psukim of the Torah after Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, Yeshua wrote, which is taka discussion. The other Masechtas taka who wrote it was it Yeshua or Moshe. But this fits in with the opinion that it was Yeshua. And the second opinion over here is a no. When we're talking about Torah Salakim, it's taka Yeshua is writing Sefer Yeshua, but he's writing that which is in Torah Salakim. In other words, the Parashas Ir Mikla, which was instructed in Torah Moshe and Torah Salakim, he wrote in Sefer Yeshua. So the Gemara taka addresses that the Pashtas, the Lasha, and Torah Salakim is mashma like the Pshat of Ches Psukim, the 8 Psukim of Zeis HaBracha. The man dama that it's Ir Mikla was Pshat Sefer Torah Salakim. So you have to explain that it does not keep Pshutai. Means to say that he wrote those things which were written in Torah Salakim, he wrote in Sefer Yeshua. Okay, since we're on the topic of machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and other Tanoim, and where we don't know who said what, Chadama v'Chadama, so we talk about machlokes with Benegeta Sefer Torah, Sefer Torah which was sewn with pishtan, with flax, with linen. Is it kosher or not? It's a machlokes. Tanoim, one says kosher, one says pasal. Rabbi Yehuda Rameya. What's the reasoning? The one who says pasal is because we know that Torah, the pasuk says the man tia Torah Hashem beficha. The parasha of Tefillin says Torah is compared to Tefillin, and just like Tefillin's halacha Moshe Messina that has to be sewed with gidin, the sinews of an animal, so too the same thing applies to Sefer Torah. That's the reason of the shit which says Sefer Torah shetafar b'pishin is pasal. And the man who says it's kosher, he holds that it's not a hekash for all the halachas of Tefillin are the same as Sefer Torah, or the other way around, that all the halachas of Sefer Torah are the same as Tefillin. Rather, only those things which are beferish in the pasuk. So, like the fact that muta beficha, the fact that the klaf of the Tefillin has to be written from a behemoth to higher, which is muta beficha, it's learned out of the pasuk mantia Torah Hashem beficha. So then we compare Torah to Tefillin and say Sefer Torah also has to be written on the klaf of a behemoth Torah. But for the other halachas, the Moshe Messina, which aren't beferish in the Torah, but the halachas, the Moshe Messina, which apply to Tefillin, we don't, pass them over to Sefer Torah, and therefore Sefer Torah doesn't have to be sewn with the gidin. It could even be sewn with pishton, and that's the shitta who says that it's kosher. Gemara continues by saying that Rav saw the tefillin of his uncle, according to another gersa, the Sefer Torah of his uncle, which was taka tefira bekisna with pishtan. And the gersa of tefillin is difficult because tefillin everyone holds can't be sewn with pishtan. So therefore, many change the gersa to the tehillim or the saf, in other words, to Sefer Torah. And the Rab was saying that his uncle Reb Chia's tefillin Reb Chia's Sefer Torah was sewn with pishtan in accordance with the shitta which is mekel, the shitta tanoim over here which is mekel. But either way, the Gemara says less hilchos akal say both Sefer Torah and tefillin have to be sewn with gidin and not with anything else. The Mishnah now turns to a different topic, which is, we know pasuk says that the Kohen Gadol, the Ritzeach goes out of Galus. When the Kohen Gadol dies. Question is, which Kohen Gadol we're referring to? So the Mishnah says it doesn't make a difference which type of Kohen Gadol. Even whether it's a Kohen Gadol with Mashur B'Shem Namishcha, whether it's a Kohen Gadol who, for whatever reason, was not anointed with this special oil, but he's just a Kohen Gadol by virtue of him wearing the Shemona Begadim, or even a Kohen Gadol who was a substitute Kohen Gadol for the Kohen Gadol, and then the original Kohen Gadol got back into his place. Even if he dies, that also lets the Ritzeach out of Galus. Rabbi Yehuda adds that even the Mashruch Macham, even the Kohen Gadol, who was just a Kohen Gadol for the purpose of leading the war, and as is mentioned over there in Parshas Shoftim, is it? Ktseitze, even if he dies, the Ritzeach goes up. The Mishnah concludes by saying that because of this issue, that the Kohanim Gedolim, that the Ritzeach's ticket out of Galus was based on the Kohen Gadol passing away, the mothers of the Kohen Gedolim would take extra care of the Ritzeach because they didn't want the Ritzchim B'Shoigeg to daven to the Kohen Gadol to die, since it was in their interest that the Kohen Gadol should die. We don't want the mothers of the Kohen Gedolim would take care of the Ritzchim so that the Ritzchim wouldn't daven that the Kohen Gedolim would die, and that way they could get out of Galus. That's the Mishnah. The Gemara asks the Kasha, how do we know that all these different types of Kohen Gedolim are let out of when they die, when they pass away, lets out the Ritzeach from the Eir Miklat. So the basic Gemara says there's 3 psukim which say Ad Mois Kohen Gadol, right? Ad Mois Kohen Gadol, Ad Mois B'Achri Mois Kohen Gadol. So from the 3 psukim we learn the different types of Kohenim Gedolim. Rabbi Yehuda, who says that there's a 4th type of Kohen Gadol, the Mashruch Muchama, that's because it says another passage Lashod L'Shavas B'Eretz Ad Mois Kohen, so we include that type of Kohen Gadol as well. And the Tanakama says no, there's no raya from there because it doesn't say the word Kohen Gadol. So in fact, it just says Kohen. It must be referring to one of the above 3, and we can't learn out the 4th type of Kohen Gadol, which is Mashruch Muchama. And therefore, according to the Tanakama, Mashruch Muchama who dies doesn't let the Ritzeach out of Eir Miklat. Then we discussed the end of the Mishnah. The end of the Mishnah says that the mothers of the Kohenim Gedolim would provide clothing and food for the Reitzchim, so that they wouldn't daven. The Gemara asks the Kasha, what do you mean? And if they would daven, right? If the Reitzchim would daven for the Kohen Gadol to die, that means they would die? We know that Kilas Chinam Leisava, you curse somebody for no reason when they don't deserve it. So then Klal doesn't get Mekuyim. So what were the mothers of the Kohenim worried about? Right? So Gemara answers that no. The Kohenim Gedolim wasn't a Klal B'Chin. The Kohenim Gedolim had some culpability, shared some responsibility in the Aveira of the Ritzeach B'Shoigeg. What's because they should have davened that for the generation. The Kohen Gadol davens for the generation. They should have davened that no such takala would come about and that no one would end up killing the B'Shoigeg. Since they didn't, they somewhat culpable and therefore worthy Reitzchim to daven for the Misa of the Kohen Gadol, Taka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu might have listened to the Tefillah and Taka caused them to die. Some Taka learn the Mishnah, a different Gersa. That it's not pshat that the mothers of the Kohanim would provide food so that the Reitzchim shouldn't daven that they die, but rather it's that the Reitzchim should daven that the Kohen Gadol shouldn't die. In other words, that right. So the Gemara asks a similar question. The default is that if the Reitzchim don't daven, the Kohen Gadol is going to die early. And we need the Reitzchim to daven that they don't die. Why are they responsible? The Gemara asks as an expression, this guy, one guy sins, the other guy gets punished. The Gemara answers the same thing that it says earlier, in the back of they should have davened to the generation. They didn't, and brings a story to this effect that the story of Shub and Levi, that a lion in his vicinity, in his area, ate a person up, And Eliyahu didn't come for him for 3 days. And the idea being that Rishub ben Levi was somewhat responsible for this terrible thing which happened in his vicinity, because the tzaddik is responsible for what goes on around him. Okay, so now since we're on this topic, we talk about kilas chacham. And we say that kilas chacham, even b'chinam, even if it's for no reason. In other words, a chacham is makal somebody, and the person doesn't deserve the klala, it still comes. In other words, even if it's not a chacham, then it doesn't come. But if it's a klala of a chacham, so then afilu b'chinam. He ba, and we learn it from Achitophel because when Dovid HaMelech was digging the foundations for the Beis Hamikdash, so there was water which became revealed, uncovered, and was threatening to flood the world. So Dovid HaMelech came up with an idea to take Kadosh Baruch Hu's name and throw it down to the depths of the ground where the water was, and that would calm the water down. He wanted to know whether it was mutter or not, and he asked, and no one said anything. So Dovid HaMelech threatened. He said a klal that anybody who knows this and doesn't say it is going to get strangled. So Achitophel at that point said, "You know what? I know. You're allowed to. Why are you allowed to? Because the kal v'choyim, if you can erase Hashem's name for the purpose of the saitar, to make shalom benish leishte, for sure, you can do so over here as well." And nevertheless, and that's what Dovid HaMelech did, and everything calmed down. Nevertheless, we see that ultimately Achitophel ended up strangling himself. The story of Avshalom over there. So we see that kilas chacham afilu b'chinam kibar. Even though Achitophel did end up saying what happened, did end up passing for Dovid HaMelech with regards to throwing the piece of earthenware with Hashem's name down to the Tohaim. Nevertheless, he still ended up getting strangled. Another similar thing, Rabbi says that kilas chacham afilu atnai, even when there's a stipulation where Chacham says, I'm cursing you if you do such and such, or if you don't do such and such, that klala comes even if the stipulation wasn't mekoyam. How do we know that? From Eli. Eli said to Shmuel that which means to say that Eli was cursing Shmuel that his children wouldn't go in his ways if Shmuel wouldn't share with him some information that he had. And nevertheless, Shmuel Taka said the information, and we see that the klala was mekoyam. And on this topic, that's Amud Aleph. On this topic, in Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, we say that nidui al t'nai tzarich hafara, that if there was a nidui, someone who put in a type of chayrim with a condition, needs to be annulled. How do we see it? We see it from Yehuda, that Yehuda said to Yaakov, his father, that if I don't bring Binyamin back to you, which means I'm going to be menuda beim lo'elam hazeh, beim lo'elam haba, I'm going to be in chayrim, we're going to be separated. And nevertheless, we see that the nidui was mekoyam. How do we see that the nidui was mekoyam? That Yehuda was taka estranged, was put in chayrim. We see that from the Moshe Rabbeinu's brachas. When Moshe Rabbeinu benched Reuven and Yehuda, so when he says, so he says an interesting l'shaynis. He said by Reuven, he says Yichil Reuven al Yamis, and then by Yehuda it says V'zois li Yehuda, which is interesting l'shaynis, which we don't find by other Shavatim. And moreover, why is Yehuda next to Reuven? So the Shmuel Nachmani explains that basically, that when the Midbar, the bones of Yehuda were not, all the other Shvatim, their bodies were intact, and Yehuda's bones were Megulgol and Bar, and they weren't joined together. They weren't. His body had become disjointed, become disconnected, one part from the other. His bones were rolling around in the coffin, and Moshe Rabbeinu asked, davened for him. How did he daven for him? With these words, Yechi Reuven v'al Yama, is meaning to say that Reuven's body is chai. Is as if Keilu hu chai, the body is intact, as if he was alive. But v'zois li Yehuda, this is what Yehuda deserves, that not. And he said, what do you mean? Yehuda was the one who was caused Reuven to be moida for his aver. When Yehuda was moida on his aver with Tamar, Reuven was also moida for his aver with the changing the beds of the imahis. So Moshe Rabbeinu was complaining. And he said, Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda, listen to the Kol Yehuda. And when he said that, the limbs went back, the body became intact again. But nevertheless, they didn't yet let him into the yeshiva Shal Maila, the Masivta de Rakia, because he was a menuda, he was a nidui. So then Moshe Rabbeinu said, V'lamoy tzaviyanu, bring him to his people. So then he could go to the Masivta de Rakia. He didn't know how to discuss. He wasn't able to argue and learning in the. So he says. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Yodav Ravloi. Still, he didn't know how to answer kasha. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ve'ezeh mitzartia, and that's pshat in the pasuk. Moshe Rabbeinu was asking that the nidui should be annulled, and ultimately the nidui was totally annulled. He could go to the Masivta de Rakia, and he knew how to, and he could participate there just like anyone else. But we see that were it not for Moshe annulling it, the nidui would be kayam, even though Yehuda didn't end up deserving the nidui. He did bring back Binyamin to Yaakov. So why should the nidui which he imposed upon himself be kayam? The answer is because of the nidui al t'nai tzarich hafar. Now we have a kasha, which is going back to the Mishnah when we said that all these different types of kainim gedolim who die let the ritzech out of the mikvah. What's pshat? Do they all need to die, or is one of them enough? So the Gemara answers, I've got a raya from the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah says nigma dina b'loy kain gadol, that if the ritzech's gemar din took place when there was no kain gadol whatsoever, then he doesn't go out of there's no Kohen Gadol, he doesn't go out of Galus, right? Because the Shaila, true, there may be no Kohen Gadol, but there was a substitute Kohen Gadol. There was a different, maybe there was a Mashuach Muhammad according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why Eini Yoitz Misham La'olam? Is a raya that one of them is not good enough. They all have to die, and since we don't have the main Kohen Gadol, so he can't go out of Galus. So my answer is no, there's no raya, because the Mishnah could very well be talking about Nigma Dinah B'lei Kohen Gadol. Doesn't mean Nigma Dinah without the main Kohen Gadol. Nigma Dinah without any Kohen Gadol. And that's why And that's why he doesn't go out of Galus. But were there to be one of them, Itaka would go out, and that's Taka halacha that B'misas Echamihan is sufficient, and we don't need all of them to die. Any one. So Rabbi Yehuda, who says Mashuach Milchama, is not a chumrah that you also need the Mashuach Milchama to die, but rather even if the Mashuach Milchama dies, that's enough to let the Ritzech out of Galus. And finally, the Mishnah, a new Mishnah, which is on this Amud, where the Mishnah says a number of dinim about the Misas Kohen Gadol. In other words, which Kohen Gadol needs to die? The Kohen Gadol was the Kohen Gadol at the time of the murder, or the Kohen Gadol was the Kohen Gadol at B'shas the Gemar Din? So we say, and other dinim related to this. So the Mishnah basically lays down the foundation. Everything goes back to the Gemar Din. Who's the Kohen Gadol at the time of the Gemar Din? And if he dies, then he goes out of Galus. So on that basis, with that understanding, the Mishnah said that what happens if the Kohen Gadol dies before the Ritzech has a chance to go to Galus? So we say that it depends. If the Kohen Gadol died after the Gemar Din, but before he had a chance to Galus, then Taki doesn't go to Galus. But if the Kohen Gadol dies before the Gemar Din, and there's a new Kohen Gadol already in place, so then he has to wait till the Kohen Gadol dies. The second Kohen Gadol, the new Kohen Gadol dies. Taki goes to Galus and waits. What happens if he killed when there's one Kohen Gadol? The Shas Gemar Din, there was no Kohen Gadol, they hadn't appointed a new Kohen Gadol. So then Taki doesn't go out of Galus at all. And the Mishnah says two other cases when he doesn't go out of Galus at all: someone who kills a Kohen Gadol, or Kohen Gadol who kills. And then the Mishnah continues with a slightly different topic, that when he goes to Galus, he doesn't go out for any reason, even if there's a good purpose, right? That he saw the new moon, Eidus Mitzvah, or he has other type of Eidus to give, to Dinimam, or even if the Klal Yisrael need him, he's a general of the army, he still doesn't go out of Galus, because it says in Pasuk Shanos Shama, we learn from the word Sham that that's where he stays, and he dies there, and he gets buried there. We say that's not only the Ir Mikvah, which is Koilet, also the Tchum, also the area around the city, also protects the Ritzech from the Goel Adam. But if the Ritzech goes out of the Tchum and the Goel Adam finds him, so then there's two different shittas in the Mishnah over. Again, it should be differentiated. We're not talking about, but on the way to when the Ritzech on his way to the Ir Mikvah, there's a discussion on Daf Yud Amud Beis whether the Goel Adam is Pater or not, and that's a whole discussion. Here we're talking about where he's in the Ir Mikvah and he leaves, then it's more lenient for the Goel Adam. And here there's two opinions. Rabbi Yisroel says it's taka mitzvah for the Goel Adam to kill. Everyone else could kill and it's mutter for them. Rabbi Kiva says no, even the Goel Adam doesn't have a mitzvah. The Goel Adam has the right to, and everyone else does not have the right to. There's two different gersos where these chayav or ein chayavin, but we won't go into that now. But either way, there's a machlokes in Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Yisroel says that anyone can kill the Ritzech if he steps out of the Ir Mikvah or the tchum of the Ir Mikvah. Rabbi Kiva says no, it's only the Goel Adam. Rabbi Yisroel says it's a mitzvah for the Goel Adam. Rabbi Kiva says no, it's just Rishus B'yad Goel Adam. With regards to other people, so Rabbi Yisroel says it's Rishus, and Rabbi Kiva says no, we're not allowed to. And there's different shatim whether you take a chayav for killing the Ritzech or not. But either way, it's awesome. What's taka? So now the Gemara, this goes back to the first case of the mission. What's taka? The reason why, if somebody, the Ritzech, Gemar didn't happen, and then the Kohen Gadol immediately died, why he doesn't go to Galus? The Gemara says if already someone's in Galus, then the Kohen Gadol Misa takes him out. So if he didn't even end up going to Galus, for sure he should not go to Galus. The Gemara takes some pshitas that taking someone out of Galus is harder to do than telling him not to go. The Gemara says, what do you mean? Galus is mechaper. So if he went to Galus, he had his kapara, but if he didn't go to Galus, maybe he should go and wait till the next Kohen Gadol dies. The Gemara says, no, it's not Galus which is mechaper ultimately. It's a combination of Galus and Mises Kohen Gadol. All right, one guy can stay one day in Galus until the Kohen Gadol dies. One guy might have to stay 50 years. So it's not time in Galus. It's a combination of the Galus and the Mises Kohen Gadol. And if that's the case, the Mises Kohen Gadol in this case is Mechaper, and he doesn't go to Galus at all. And then we discuss the next case in the Mishnah, which is Imad Shaloi Nigmar Dinei Meis. Right? Which means to say that if the Ritzeach kills with one Kohen Gadol, and now there's another Kohen Gadol. So we say he has to wait for the Misa of the Kohen Gadol, who was a Kohen Gadol B'Shas Gemaridin. Where's this learned from? We say it's learned from the pasuk Yashav Ba'Mois HaKohen Gadol Hashem Moshach Ois B'Shanim HaKodesh. Very interesting lashon, which sounds like the Ritzeach is the one who anointed the Kohen Gadol to be Kohen Gadol. That's not true. He didn't anoint him. So what's Pshat? So we say Shenimshach B'Yam. That we're talking about a certain case where he became a Kohen Gadol after he became a Ritzeach. The kasha is then what's the higoyin? What's the svar shabbat? How do we make sense out of this? Why should the Ritzeach going out of Mikla be taloi in the Kohen Gadol who wasn't even a Kohen Gadol at the time of the murder? Mishlaim the Kohen Gadol who was the Kohen Gadol at the time of his murder, he's somewhat responsible. So that makes sense. That's like we said in Yudal Famadal, he should have davened. But over here, he wasn't even Kohen Gadol b'shas Ritzicha. So the Gemara answers that he should have davened sheyigma din elischos. He also was called, but he could have davened that the Gemara din should come out favorably, and he didn't, and therefore the Ritzech's ticket out of Gauls is taloi in the misa of the Kohen Gadol who was Kohen Gadol b'shas the Gemara din. And now we say a number of cases with regards to Kvura. Yeah, that what happens if somebody doesn't have a chance to go to Gauls, but not the Kohen Gadol died, the Ritzech died. What do we do? Does he still go to Galus? In other words, do we take his body? So Abaye says, yeah. Noktinon, that there's Allah Messina Kabbalah that even if the Ritzech dies before getting a chance to go to the Mikla, we take his bones to Galus, and we learn it out of a pasuk. What happens if it's the other way around? The Ritzech Taka goes to Mikla, but he dies in the Mikla before the Kohen Gadol dies. What do we do then? So we say we bury him in the Mikla. And then when the Kohen Gadol dies, we take him out. We take him back. We move. When the Kohen Gadol dies, dead or alive, the Ritzeach goes out of Galus. If he's alive, he leaves Galus. And if he's already has died, before the Kohen Gadol dies, so then we take his bones, we take his body up out of the Ermik, up to the burial place of his family. We learn that out of Psukim as well. And finally, the final discussion is what happens. The Kohen Gadol doesn't die, but we find out that the Kohen Gadol isn't really a Kohen Gadol. He's a Chalal. So what happens then? There's two shittas. One shitta is, one Amoira says that it's as if he dies. Taka, the Kohen Gadol didn't die, but the Kohen Gedola expired. It ended. So therefore, Taka, at that point, he goes out of Galus, or as Rashi seems to learn, that we're talking about a situation where he didn't go to Galus yet. So Taka doesn't go to Galus, because it's as if Meis Kohen Gadol. Another Amoira says, no, Batla Kohen. It's retroactively the whole Kohen was bottled, and it's as if the B'Shas Gemardin there was no Kohen Gadol at all. Where the Mishnah says that Eini Yotzim Sham Lo'edim, in such a situation he goes to Galus and never leaves, and that's Machlokes Amoraim. Now the Gemara suggests that the Machlokes Amoraim is taloi in the Machlokes Tanoim. What Machlokes Tanoim? The Machlokes Tanoim about a Kohen who offered up karbanis, and then we find out that the Kohen is a Chalal. So Rabbi Lezer says that all the karbanis that he offered up while he was Kohen apostle because he's not a Kohen. Rabbi Shur says no, his karbanis are kasha. So we want to say that it's Tali Habaha, that the Amoiru earlier on said that Misa Kona, that the Kohen is considered a good Kohana, but then when we find out that he's a Chal, it's as if the Kohen Gadol died. That fits in with the Shitta of Rabbi Shur, says the karbanis are kasha. And the one who says Batla Kona, retroactively the whole Kona Gedola is Batla, fits in with the Shitta of Rabbi Lezer, who says that the karbanis that the Kohen offered up while he was a Chal apostle. So Gemara answers no. There's no raya. You don't have to say that the Amoraim or Mamish arguing the Machlokes Tanoim, but rather like this. Rabbi Lezer for sure. Rabbi Lezer who says that the karbanis were apostle for sure fits in only with the Amoira who says, right? In other words, the Amoira who says that Meisa Kohana can't go like Rabbi Lezer. But the Machlokes could be within Rabbi Shur. Even though Rabbi Shur says the karbanis are kasher, it's lav dafka. That means that the Meisa Kona, maybe Batla Kona, and really retroactively the karbanis should be possible. But the reason why Rabbi Shur says the karbanis are kasher because a special pasuk Baruch Hashem Chelef Al Yad Tirtza, which is mashma, that even a chalal sometimes his karbanis are accepted, and that's a situation where he didn't know he was a chalal. We didn't know he was a chalal. Then his karbanis on the skabel. But normally, ordinarily, for all other dinim, Rabbi Shur might agree that. That Batla Kuna is retroactive, and with regards to Golos, Eini Yotzim Misham La'olam. So ultimately, we have Machlokes Amoraim with regards to whether a Kohen Ritzech who kills b'shoige, and then later the later we find that the Kohen Gadol is not really a Kohen. What happens? Do we say he doesn't go to Galus because it's as if he's Nigma Dini below Kohen Gadol? Or do we say no? It's as if the Kohen Gadol died. Sorry, then any Yotz Misham La'olam, because, or do we say it's as if the Kohen Gadol died? In which case he doesn't go to Galus. We wanted to connect to Makkos Rabbi Shua. Ultimately, we said that it could even be within Rabbi Shua. That even Rabbi Shua says the Karbanis Akasha, that could be special local din b'negei to Karbanis. But in all other instances, the we would consider it to be Batla Kona. Okay, we'll stop over here and we'll see you all next Monday, Be'ez Hashem.